Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Grapevine. I am Christine.
I'm Susie.
And I'm Susan.
And today we have a special guest with us. It's Father Maurice Ibrahim from St. Athanasius Coptic American Orthodox Church. Welcome to our Grapevine.
Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome, Abuna.
And today we have a very interesting topic that constantly crosses our mind, I would say, and it's handling our finances. But before we get into the details of the day-to-day practices that we should all follow, we want to ask you actually, how do you think we could honor God with our finances, and how can we be good stewards on that?
So thank you for having me, first of all. It's a funny topic that you ask a priest about finances.
It is, but given your history.
But my background was in
Exactly.
finance, and I've done a fair bit of work in finance, so I could shed some light on some of these topics. But I'm going to try to look at it from a spiritual perspective. I could talk to you about lots of different things in finance in general, but we need to look at it from the fact that it's a resource. We are given three major resources in our life. One is time, that's a resource. Our energy, how much energy we have, that's a resource. And the third is really our financials.
Okay.
And you could think of it as talents as well. The Bible mentions talents.
Yeah.
So you could have talents that are financial talents. You could have talents that are actual talents that you could help other people with. And time and energy is talents as well. This is something. So the Bible is very clear in Matthew when it says, basically in chapter 25, when the master says, "Well done, good and faithful servant." He said that when he's talking about the talents. And he says, "You've been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord." So this faithfulness is really key when it comes to our resources.
Correct.
Whether it's faithfulness with our time, our energy, or our money, we have to be faithful, and we have to give an account for that in front of God. In the Old Testament, God would ask the people to give tithes. But in the New Testament, God wants us to give Himself our hearts. So it's not just here you go. It's our whole life. Come and follow me. Carry the cross and follow me.
Yes.
Unless you love me more than than a father and a mother and a wife, and you don't deserve me. It's a very high level. So I have to
Commitment.
leave everything behind and to attach myself to God. But in the meantime, for those who have not taken the vow of poverty, they still need to know how to manage their finances. And they need to know to do it in an honorable way, to give back as much as they can, to enrich other people, to use the material resources for heavenly glory. That's just the broad kind of answer to your question. We can go into details about finances in general.
And we will.
And we will.
We've got a lot of
The
questions.
second level would be basically, I make a certain income, I have certain expenses, and then I have a net benefit at the end. Hopefully not a net loss.
Yes.
So I have to know how much I'm earning. I have to know what are my expenses. And expenses, we could break it down into fixed expenses that I can't change and variable expenses that change. And then I have to know what my net, they call it net benefit at the end.
Okay.
Because a lot of times people are like, well, this is how much I make, this is how much I spend, but this is my net benefit. Oh, I forgot to pay taxes. Well, that's not
There you
really
go.
net.
Yeah.
Right.
Net is net.
gross, but
After
net.
everything.
Everything
Yeah.
is
So the
paid for.
absolute net.
All expenses.
So I agree with that. I think that we have these resources or these talents, these gifts. So how does one, and I know this is like a loaded question. How do we do it day to day? How do we get it right?
Yeah.
What's the best
Very
way?
good
And I know
question.
I know we have expenses. I know that there's some fixed ones, and then there's also like how we're spending it. Sometimes they become fixed because of the way we're spending it. So what's a good way to manage it day to day?
So
Short-term
there are
things.
many different apps and softwares that actually monitors your expenses.
Right.
Most credit cards have an app that monitors your expenses on a regular basis. Most apps, you could actually set a budget for different things.
Okay.
Few kind of tricks of the trade,
Yeah.
they would say, is that in terms of managing your debt, for
Okay.
example,
That's a good
you know,
point.
when you manage your debt, you have debts that you have to pay interest on. The best trick of the trade in managing debts is to consolidate all of your debts into one account with one fixed payment, with one end date of when you're going to finish paying those debts. So you don't have like 10 different credit cards running around and you're trying to manage, well, the interest rate of this one is 10%, this one is 15%, this is 19%, this is 2%.
Become a vicious cycle.
So, and there's many ways to consolidate your debts. Many companies now offer consolidation of debts loans, where okay, on average I pay an interest of 18% on my credit card, whatever. Well, this company is going to give me a loan for 8%.
Right.
So I take all of my credit cards, I pay them with that new account. I know where my account is. I know what my debts are. I know what my fixed payment is, and I know when I'm going to be debt free. So that's just one of the trick of the trades of how to manage debt. The opposite of managing debts is to manage your investments, and it goes the opposite. When you have investments, again, just a general rule, don't put all your investments in one thing.
Yes.
Right.
Diversify, put in different things, different portions, different returns that you are expected, different periods of how long you're going to keep it in every investment, and so forth. The more you have different investments and different returns, a different risk profile, and different all these things, the more that if something goes down, at least something else will go up. So again, that's just a general rule of managing debt and managing investments. Managing day-to-day expenses, the simplest thing is that if you dedicate one credit card for one category, and you know what the set limit of that credit card is, you know that you can't exceed it.
Okay.
So let's
There
say
you go.
Budget
exactly.
on there, yes.
So instead of saying I'm going to definitely try to keep my budget to whatever $200 for this, no, just get a credit card
With that.
with that limit,
With that max, with that.
and say, okay, I'm only going to use it no matter what happens. That's it. I'm
Not
done.
exceeding it.
Right.
And the good thing is like, okay, I know this is the credit card or this is the debit for this account that only has this amount for this category. The other way to manage your expenses is to put on autopilot.
Okay.
And that works for tithing, that works for anything. So whatever is left is barely the bare minimum that you have. So if I know that once I get my paycheck, automatically I'm paying my mortgage, let's say. It's automatic. I don't
Coming
have to
out
take
of
it
your
out.
account
Right.
right away.
Automatically I'm paying the
You don't have to
consolidation
think
of
about it.
debts that I put together. Done. I'm all of the fixed expenses, whether it's like other things in the house or food or whatever, or other, it doesn't have to be fixed, maybe variable expenses.
Right.
Okay, then whatever is left, okay, I have this much left, I know it's in this bank account. If I use it up, I use it up. If I don't use it up, I save it. Wonderful.
Okay.
I'm going to put a portion towards my savings. I'm going to put a portion towards my investment. I'm going to put a portion towards whatever. So if everything is fully automated,
Right.
then the amount
Smaller
of the
chance
chance
to-
that you have
To
earn.
to do something
Yeah.
wrong is
To be
limited.
It's like, yeah.
Right, right.
So that's another
point.
way to actually manage that.
That's a very good.
It sounds easier said than done. I think it's easier for someone not married for some reason. I feel like marriage, that's where like maybe the colliding of what that budget should be.
Maybe
So
that's where discipline comes in.
Yes. You know,
different
somebody has a
schools.
different level than you or vice versa. and
So
I'm
with,
like-
with marriage, you obviously the husband and the wife need to talk,
Right, yes.
Set goals.
need to communicate.
Yes.
They don't both need to be experts in finance,
Right.
but again, they need to know, okay, here's the income that's coming in, here's the expenses, here's the fixed expenses, here are the variable expenses, here's roughly where we hope to net. They discuss plans for the future, they discuss plans for their kids.
Right.
So they both in the know. Most likely there's always one that's more
Spendy?
interested, or at least
Than
more
the
interested
other.
than the
Yeah.
other. And most likely there's one that spends more than the other.
Yeah.
So as long as you identify that, we're like, okay, so whoever is going to spend more,
More.
quote, unquote,
Balance each
that
other.
person should really have a limited credit
Credit
card.
card.
It's like, okay, I know, we tried it before,
It didn't work.
didn't work out, then I'm
So
gonna.
here's a way to tackle
Yeah.
it.
Right. That
And
sounds
that
safe.
could be a guy, that could be the husband or the wife.
Sure.
There's no like,
Yeah.
you know.
Right.
And the other one that's really more strict, okay, then you don't have to worry about that. But that communication, that plan, that consolidation of information, okay,
a good way to
knowing
put
all
it.
this, it's good, that it's a partnership basically.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Okay. It's good.
All right.
Good ideas.
That's a very good answer.
Very good
Ramona.
ideas. Gotta put
You
it
know,
in practice.
There
I've
you
got
go.
several questions, but I think I want to start a little bit with, how can we avoid, the love of money and the desire to be rich, right? And the desire to, make more money and save more money or spend more money. I mean, that's just such a huge challenge in everybody's mind, because it's like we want to progress in life in so many areas, but is it a sin to wanting to keep progressing in the amount of money we have and the amount of money we want,
So I think the simple answer is that our success metrics have to be different.
Right.
So the world identifies success very explicit metrics. How much money I have, how big my house is, what kind of car I have, how many investments do I have. These are worldly metrics of the world of what they think success is.
Okay.
Right.
We are not of the world,
Right.
Yes.
and our metrics are not of the world. Our metrics are spiritual metrics, and spiritual metrics are more difficult than earthly metrics,
Right.
just as a general rule. Because I could quantify my bank account as this amount, but I can't quantify my spiritual level. I can't say, well, I'm half Saint Athanasius.
Yeah,
a
I'm level
quarter.
5.
I can't.
Couldn't possibly.
Right?
Yeah.
But we have to work harder to actually identify our spiritual metrics.
Okay.
And we can do this through the help of our Father of Confession, where we're actually trying to see, am I progressing or not? Sometimes I don't see it, but my Father of Confession would help me see it. Sometimes I'd be like, you know what, I'm struggling to do my tithes on a regular basis. But now, you know what, I pushed myself and now I can. Okay, so I could measure that I'm progressing in the right direction.
Oh, good.
You know what, I used to pray only for 5 minutes, now I can actually pray for 15 minutes. I can measure that. The more I open the channels of grace in my life, that by itself is a metric of success. And the measures of grace are prayer. Prayer is one of the measures of grace, the access to grace in my life. So the more I pray, the more I'm opening the channel between me and God to converse, to have a relationship. That by itself is a success. When I read the Bible, that's me receiving feedback from my prayers. So imagine I'm having a conversation with you. I'm talking and then you're talking back. Well, how do we do this with God? Well, when I talk, that's me praying. When He talks, it's me listening or reading the Bible.
The Bible.
So this is a measure of success. And this is how I should continue to progress. I should try to read more. I should try to pray more. I should try to develop a personal, intimate relationship with God. And over time, I could actually start learning the attributes of God. Oh, just like I've dealt with you long enough, I know you and you know me.
Yeah.
So I started to mimic you and you start to mimic me.
Yes.
Same thing with my relationship with God.
Yes.
And we don't look at earthly possessions as a measure of success.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, we're leaving it. So no matter how much I accomplish, let's say I become a billionaire.
Billionaire. Yeah.
Well, that means I'm going to actually have more to lose when I go to heaven.
Yeah.
I just
good way to
lost
look at
$1
it.
billion.
Right.
And where that billion's going,
Exactly.
who knows, right?
It's going to go to our kids or grandkids.
Yeah,
It doesn't
yeah.
matter.
Whoever, yeah.
I am, $100 billion worth of, that means I'm going to lose even more.
Yeah.
Right.
So the more that projection, so you have a limited time, limited resources, limited energy, because your energy is not constant all throughout your life,
No.
right? Once I get that in perspective, then everything changes.
Yes.
My measures of success changes, my effort and what I put. Yeah, I could still be faithful and I could do my part with my money, but that's not what's taking my, effort. I'm looking up to heaven. I'm not looking down on earth.
Yes.
Sometimes what I tell people as well is go and visit, someone that just passed away. Go to a funeral. I know sometimes it's like daunting and creepy and sad, but I'm like, just go and
Might be
attend a funeral.
necessary.
And maybe a funeral of someone that you might know. And then see what happens after the person dies. Because guess what? You're going to go through it, I'm going to go through it, so
Everyone, yeah.
everyone's going to go through it.
Yep.
And then you see, this person that was a doctor or a pharmacist or an engineer or a lawyer or a businessman, this amazing person that had so much, he's in a cast. He's in the ground. That's it? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
it.
It's over.
So all this accomplishment, where did that go?
Didn't mean much.
It
If,
did,
yeah.
but either he was smart enough to invest, and I'll use financial terms now,
Yeah.
invest
Good.
in heavenly glory, or he invested in earthly possessions. So the more we look at this picture, the more we see that we should invest in heavenly glory.
That's a very good answer, Bunit.
with that being said, we're looking into how to handle our finances from a spiritual standpoint. That should be always our foundation. So we want to know if we obviously know that gambling may not be very spiritually sound, but with that being said, can you please shed the light on stock market, and if it is or if it is not? It's a common question to somebody who may not be very diverse, in finances like
And is it
yourself.
gambling?
And essentially,
gamble,
is it
right?
gambling or is it not? Or how
it
do we
not
go
gambling?
ahead and definitely pursue that, feeling that
Okay,
we're not necessarily
so-
committing a sin?
So are the people who won big on GameStop, have they sinned big?
It's another
Okay,
question.
If they've tithed it.
And does the church accept that tithe?
So the church does not accept any form of
Yeah.
gambling, winnings
Yes.
of
Yeah,
any
yeah,
form.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so when I invest, you have to understand that there are three parameters that comes in any investment. One is time, one is risk, and one is return.
Yes.
Okay, so I could invest in something for a minute,
Right.
or I can invest in something for 10 years. That's
Right.
time. I can invest in something that has high risk, that could lose its
In
full
value.
value,
Right.
or it has very low risk. And I could invest in something that gives me 100% return or 0% return.
Right.
You will never get the best of three worlds of those three things:
Right.
time, risk, and return. It will not happen. And the analogy I used to give to some people, we did one.
We did that,
We did
yeah.
one in the church. Where I'm like, even a drug dealer,
Right.
An illegal drug dealer.
an illegal, well, yeah,
Aren't
not
they
a
all
pharmacist,
legal?
not a pharmacist, deals with the same thing: time, risk, and return. Time is that they want to make money right away. Risk, a huge risk that they're
Risk,
taking, they can go to jail. And return is pretty good return.
Yes.
And they're a drug deal, but they'll never get the three guys. I could never make money in the shortest amount of time with
Safely.
absolutely no risk and the highest return.
Yeah.
It just doesn't
Right.
work.
Doesn't work
So
that
I
way.
have to juggle those three things in any investment. It could be in stocks. I'm putting my money in an investment in this stock of this company for the next 5 years. I expect a volatility. Volatility is just another name for risk. Volatility of this much over the 5 years, but I'm hoping to achieve 10% return, 20% return, whatever the number is. The idea about GameStop and short selling, it's a whole other episode. I have to teach you what short selling is.
Yeah.
But the
There we
idea
go.
behind it is that there's lots of people that basically played around with options, which is a whole other topic, to make as much money as they can in such a short time. But it's fairly advanced way of investing that most likely just didn't take an average Joe to do.
Right.
Okay.
So to know about short stops and floats, basically I could sell a stock before I can buy it. That's what short selling is.
All right.
Again, that's a whole other episode. That means
Very
that
complicated.
That means
Yeah.
I'm borrowing a stock
Right.
in order to sell it.
That's what the hedge funds
and then
do, right?
and then
The hedge
buy it
happen.
back. But then if I borrow something, I'm gonna have to pay a premium for that, for me borrowing. But then I could take this and have someone else borrow it,
Right.
have someone else borrow
Yeah.
it, have someone else borrow it.
Right.
And so
Right.
that the amount of short stocks could be higher than the amount of float to begin with.
Right.
So if there's too many of them, that means everybody has sold expecting that the stock price will
Going
go down.
Yeah.
Right.
So if other people realize that this is a
Hedge
stock
fund.
that is way high on the short sell, if we all buy it and the price keep going up, their premium that they are paying to borrow this stock keeps going up. And they might be called,
Yeah,
called
yeah.
or called margin. So they might be called on it, and they have to buy at a very high
High
price.
price.
So basically, we almost like we ganged up on the person
Okay.
that
The
hedge
sold
fund,
the
yeah.
hedge funds.
Initially.
But most likely what happened is not just your average person, because
Right.
it's very intricate and so most
Complicated.
likely another hedge fund realized
come in,
this
yeah.
and they actually did
Yep.
that.
Yes.
So that kind of answers the GameStop
Right.
question. But gambling in
So much
general,
on that one.
gambling in general is when people think I'm just gonna buy these options and tomorrow I'm gonna make $1 million, and so that is gambling. So
Yes.
gambling is wrong because you're actually stepping away from the fundamentals. So there's a way to invest called the fundamental way of testing or the technical way of investing. Fundamental, just looking at the company and just understanding the business,
history.
understanding the competition and say, yeah, Amazon will do well in this kind of market. and I'm going to invest for the long term, versus technical, which is basically, oh, the stock price went higher than the moving average over a period of time. Oh, it dropped now, so I'm going to buy it now. It's more of like, think of the fundamentals more of a strategic approach, and technical is more of the tactical approach.
Okay.
So they're two different things, but of course, if someone is just throwing their money hoping for a lottery ticket, it's just another way of buying a lottery ticket.
Right.
You know.
Okay.
So, and it's not wrong to do that, right? Where you're doing it long term and you're doing like the IRAs and.
So
You
you
know,
can
for
invest,
retirement.
like I said, you could invest, again, with these three parameters, you can invest different time horizons, different risk profile, different returns.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. The problem comes in when it's consuming your time and energy.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
You know,
Thoughts.
so someone
Which is very common now.
which is very
Very
common.
common.
Everyone.
So
yeah.
someone like I know what I'm doing, so it's not consuming a lot of time if I decide to buy options or decide to buy stocks, whatever. I know what I'm doing, so I'm just doing it, and I know my returns. I know sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong, but it's not like day trading where I'm sitting in front of the monitor doing
right.
It's not
watching
time-consuming.
every
Yeah,
tick
yeah,
and
yeah,
every
yeah.
tick, and then I get nervous, and so anything that takes away your time and your energy from
Or
God,
peace.
or your peace.
Yeah.
And then sadly, because a lot of people are just still learning about these things,
Yes.
they almost get hooked into the
It's-
community of,
Right,
of
It's like this
trading.
adrenaline rush, right?
Well,
Oh, it's
again,
up, it's down, it's,
There's
you know.
like the time frames, just for everybody's information, the time frames of like a day trading is called day trading. So my time frame is just a day.
Right.
Swing trading is more of like a week or 2 weeks. Investment is
Long-term,
longer.
yeah.
So you have to identify who am I? Am I an investor?
Right.
Am I a swing trader, or am I day trading? The higher the risk is usually with the short term.
Okay.
Again, remember those three variables.
Right.
You're never going to get all of them. The less risk, or the part that you don't care as much about because you're investing for the next 5-10 years, is more of the investment
Right.
part.
Yeah.
So your risk profile, even if it goes up or down, you don't have to worry about it because you still have a 5-year horizon.
Okay.
So most of the gambling happens in the day trading, and most of it happens with the tick, one up, one down. You know, I'm watching every minute. I'm watching
Yeah.
every
Right.
because it makes a difference and all of that. But
Right.
investing in general, if you just put your money in a profile of
Diversify your
company,
profile.
then and you're leaving it, it's not wrong. Even swing trading, I'm gonna try to buy something because I know in a couple of weeks, they call it a catalyst event will take place, like they're coming up with a new drug.
Right.
Oh, so their stock price is going to go up in a couple of
Yes.
weeks. So I'm gonna buy something now. Wait for a couple of weeks. If it goes up, wonderful. If it doesn't, I'm gonna. So again, that it's just about how much time and energy it's consuming your
Right.
day-to-day thinking.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very insightful, and I agree with you because it can become very, I guess, addictive, right? People
Yeah.
are on there and looking, and they, like you said, if they don't understand it, then they waste more time and energy and emotions,
Absolutely.
and then they're distracted from their daily activities or their time away from God. So, I totally agree with that. So, I mean, if you know what. In terms of spending or seeking help, if somebody is struggling with finances, like what would you say would be a good, educational, like if somebody doesn't know how to manage their finances
Sure.
and they're spending too much, or they don't know that they're spending, or they're being indulgent, sometimes we are careless with our money, right? So, how do they retract, or how do they train themselves to get on that path?
Do you recommend the Dave Ramsey classes?
Yeah.
So I differ than Dave Ramsey on his approach. He's extremely conservative when it comes to taking loans.
Yeah.
He basically says unless it's a house, everything that you have to pay for, you have to save for first.
Correct.
Cash.
I don't agree with that because cash. And again, we're going to start getting technical now. Cash in its purest form is a depreciating asset. Because of inflation.
Right.
So if I have $1,000 today, because of inflation, it's not gonna. I don't have the same purchasing power of $1,000
Yeah.
10 years from now. So
Right.
by default, it's depreciating. So when someone tells me, well, you got to save like 4 months of your income and putting in cash, I'm like, but it's going to depreciate.
Right.
And if I'm going to keep it there for the next 10 years in case I lose my job or something, then it's going to continue to depreciate. It's a lot better to say, you know what, I'm going to take this money and invest it in something that gives me higher than inflation rate. So at least I know that's going to make me money. Inflation rate, let's say, is 2 to 3%. I'm going to invest in something 5%, 6%, whatever. And I'm just going to keep it aside and not touch it. I still could access it if I want, but I'd rather get a line of credit, let's say, for the same amount. And the line of credit could be a secured line of credit based on my home or my any physical asset, or an unsecured line of credit, which is just it's just a higher rate. And I'm going to keep that on the side in case of an emergency. So when something happens, God forbid, I have two options. Either I could take from a line of credit that if it's, let's say it's a secured line of credit for my home, then it's most likely I'm just going to pay the mortgage rate. And the mortgage rates are very low, let's say 3% or 4%, whatever the number is. So I know that taking money out that's costing me 4% is better than taking the money that I'm going to invest that's going to bring me 5 or 6%. And I'm only going to access it if there's an emergency.
Right.
So I didn't waste my cash in a depreciating asset. I put it in money that actually is generating investments for me at 5 or 6%, whatever the case may be. And I have an access to money right away if I need to, in case this is kind of taking a dip and it's not making money at that point. I have a line of credit. So that way it's a lot more stable and I'm not putting lots of cash aside. I'm an anti-cash person. And you know this because the policies that are happening right now in the US, for example, they just passed, let's say, a $1.9 trillion. And what people don't understand, is that the current debt in the U.S. is around $30 trillion.
Yes.
And in the past year or two, they have printed more money than they have in the past 10 years. And there's another actually bill coming up for another $4 trillion for infrastructure. So every time there's more supply, monetary supply, that actually depreciates the dollar value. And it's just simple supply and demand. They're just printing more money, so therefore my money that I had is actually depreciating in value.
Right.
So I have to put it in something else that maintains value. It could be investments, it could be gold, it could be Bitcoin, like that's a whole other world.
Yeah.
Real estate.
Or it could be real estate, anything that what would be something that appreciates in value, and it's not just going to be cash. So that's why I don't think David Ramsey talks about all these things. I think he's looking at it from the perspective that a person doesn't really know enough about finance, and it's better to just pay everything cash because you just don't know how to manage your own finance.
Right.
In terms of good books, like you asked, there's lots of good books out there. There's The Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's a classic book.
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
good book.
There's an Automatic Millionaire book
Okay.
that talks about what I said earlier about putting
Sure.
everything in auto. There's many great books. So I always encourage people to learn on their own and to read books on their own
Right.
before you start listening to someone, especially like a financial investor that will benefit if you do certain things.
Right.
So
not
obviously there's a bias.
Yes.
So we actually in the church, one of the things that we just did recently
Yeah,
for
that was
the
very
young
helpful.
professional graduates is that I told them, I'm going to teach you about finance because I know that you're not going to get it from the world. Our education system sadly does not teach it well.
Not anymore.
And there's a lot of people out there that would actually take advantage of you
Yes.
by what they're giving you advice on. So I'm selling mutual funds. I'm going to tell you the benefits of mutual funds. I'm going to forget about everything else so you can get mutual funds from me. So when it comes from an unbiased
Yes.
priest, I have nothing to benefit from. I'm just trying to make sure that you don't get hurt.
And Abuna, today we couldn't thank you enough for the valuable information you've given us freely.
Yes.
And we might very well be visiting this topic again, probably in
Oh,
the
absolutely.
future.
Yeah, there's
With
a
that
A lot
being
of
said,
questions on this topic, as usual.
yes, we've definitely enjoyed your presence with us, and we've enjoyed this episode on the Grapevine about finances today, and we hope that you did too. So thank you, Abuna, for coming.
Thank you, Abuna. That
Thank
was
you,
very good.
ladies.
Thank you, ladies.
And
It's good.
we hope to see you again on another episode with the Grapevine. Bye-bye.
Bye.